My fellow Americans, the issue facing our nation isn't how old we are, it's how old are our ideas. Hate, anger, revenge, retribution are the oldest of ideas. But you can't lead America with ancient ideas that only take us back. You lead America, the land of possibilities. You need a vision for the future and what can and should be done. Tonight you've heard mine. I see a future where defending democracy, you don't diminish it. I see a future where we restore the right to choose and protect our freedoms, not take them away. I see a future where the middle class finally has a fair shot and the wealthy have to pay their fair share in taxes. I see a future where we save the planet from the climate crisis and our country from gun violence. Above all, I see a future for all Americans. I see a country for all Americans. And I will always be president for all Americans because I believe in America. I believe in you, the American people. You're the reason we've never been more optimistic about our future than I am now. So let's build the future together. Let's remember who we are. We are the United States of America. And there is nothing beyond our capacity when we act together. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, thank you.
The United States has its annual State of the Union address. And Joe Biden was on a cocktail of drugs to make him lucid and energetic. Could he keep it together for 45 minutes? Here to tell us about how he did and what he did is our friend Joel Pollak, senior editor-at-large at Breitbart.com. Joel, great to see you again.
Good to be with you. I don't know if he was on any drugs, but he was certainly on a very high volume. So he was shouting for quite some time.
I believe that he is on a cocktail of meds just to give him boost moments of lucidity and energy. I truly believe that. I have no evidence of it other than the fact that when he's not on for a big show speech, he mumbles and meanders and falls asleep. So I juxtapose those key moments with the rest of his mumbles. I suppose it's a speculative theory on my part. But let's put that aside. Let's talk about his tone for a bit. It was a little bit unusual, a little bit odd, a little bit partisan, a little bit angry. What do you make of that?
Well, it was very odd, very partisan, and very angry. We haven't seen a State of the Union address like this in my lifetime, and probably ever. We've never seen the State of the Union used in a way to attack the opposition. And that's not where you do this. The State of the Union is not a campaign speech. Of course, it can be political. Of course, it will reflect the president's ideology. Of course, you see the party that supports the president standing and applauding, and the party that opposes the president typically sitting down for many of the portions of the speech where the president's talking about his policy agenda. So there's always a partisan element to it, but it's never used to attack the opposition as a focus of the speech. And that's what stood out. Biden used this address to tarnish Republicans, to claim that they're a threat to democracy. He went after Donald Trump. No, he didn't mention Trump's name, but he talked about my predecessor this, my predecessor that. Everybody knew who he was talking about. And Trump never did that. You know, Trump was quite pugnacious. Trump would fight with people, insult people on social media and so forth. But when Trump delivered a State of the Union address, it was really about the presidency and Congress and the grand spectacle of American government. Trump would even say things that would make his opponents stand up and applaud. In 2019, when he lost the House to Democrats, or just after the new Democrats had taken their seats in the Capitol, he earned a standing ovation even from the likes of left-wing Democrat Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez when he devoted part of his speech to praising the role of women in leadership positions in American politics. That's how you do a State of the Union address. You don't abuse the platform to take pot shots at your opponent. He also took shots at the Supreme Court. That hasn't been seen since Barack Obama did the same thing. It was probably the ugliest moment of the Obama presidency, or one of them. I suppose there'd be a long list because Obama had a penchant for doing things like that. But Obama, the great constitutional scholar that we were told he was, took a shot at the Supreme Court. And of course, the justices seated in front of him, I think 6 of the 9 were there, they're not allowed to respond in any way. They can't react. They're not supposed to say anything. They're supposed to be completely apolitical. They come as a courtesy to the president and to show the 3 branches of government in one place. But for Obama to insult the Supreme Court was horrible. Biden just did it again. This was not an appropriate State of the Union address. However, it did achieve one great thing for President Biden, which is that it showed he can speak for an hour or more without falling asleep, without falling down. He still has energy. He still has stamina. And he may not be in full command of the country at times or the details of policy, and he forgets names and dates and so forth. But this display was very important as a message to his party that they should not try to replace him before the 2024 election. And actually, before the speech, I said, if you want Joe Biden to lose in November, you should want him to do very well tonight, because the chances of Democrats winning are lower with Joe Biden in office. They're higher with another candidate. If you have another more vigorous candidate who can replace him, then that candidate would theoretically do better against Donald Trump. Joe Biden is possibly the only Democrat who could lose to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is, in fact, beating him everywhere. So if you want Trump to win, or you simply just want Biden to lose, then you needed him to do a good enough job last night to convince his own party it would be a waste of time to replace him. And he did that. He actually delivered the speech, and some Democrats liked all the partisanship. Of course, that's a very short-sighted view, because once the shoe's on the other foot, you can get it back in your face. But that's how people reacted to it. I think that Democrats liked it, and they felt more confident in the president. Everybody else thought, what is this man doing leading our country? He has a temper that he can't control. He did stumble during the speech, despite whatever stimulants or otherwise he might have been on. He stumbled many times. He made mistakes. And there was more heckling than I've ever seen or heard at a State of the Union address. And much of it was well-deserved, because after they had heard the president go after them so viciously, many Republicans decided they'd had enough. People were shouting things about how the president was lying. There was a Gold Star father, the father of one of the 13 U.S. servicemen and women killed in Afghanistan in the terror attack during the evacuation. He was there in the gallery, and he started heckling Joe Biden. He was eventually arrested and taken out. But that has not happened. It never happened during Trump speeches. It happened once during an Obama speech, and the congressman who made the interjection at the time apologized profusely and so forth. So it's really a violation of decorum. But Biden basically invited it because he was attacking the opposition. You don't do that in a State of the Union address. One final point I'll make about the address, or maybe a couple, so penultimate point here. Biden started out talking about Vladimir Putin and Russia. Now, I know that for some people that's a very important issue. I care a lot about foreign policy. You would never start the State of the Union by talking about another country. You don't start by talking about Ukraine. He mentioned Sweden and Finland before he mentioned the people of the United States. I don't know who the speechwriters are, and I don't know why Washington thinks that these issues, like NATO expansion, are the number one thing they have to tackle in a State of the Union address. But they put it right up front. It was a terrible, terrible way to start. He didn't even wait for the speaker to introduce him. He just launched right into his speech about Putin and Ukraine and so forth. And this is a moment like World War II, and all nonsense, but also just deeply offensive. The purpose of the State of the Union, the constitutional purpose, is the president has to report to Congress about the state of the United States. Don't start with Putin and Ukraine. And the other thing is, we heard over and over again during Trump's presidency about what an anti-Semite he was. Well, Trump spent a lot of time in his State of the Union addresses dealing with anti-Semitism, criticizing anti-Semitism, praising Holocaust survivors, talking about the Jewish community, speaking out against prejudice. He spent several minutes in 2019 in his speech talking about exactly that. Biden didn't mention anti-Semitism at all, not once during the entire speech. We've got a wave of anti-Semitism here. I know that there are incidents in Canada as well that you just mentioned. Biden didn't say a thing about it, not one thing. So this was a campaign speech. It was not the speech of a man leading a country and really confronting the challenges that Americans face.